What's good? I'm Kinell, and this is Sinister Cinema, where we get deep into the guts of the stranger side of cinema. Just letting you know with this little bit at the start that we now have a Patreon. Sub up to that and you can get all these episodes early and ad-free, so you won't even see this bit at the start. You get them a few days before the main episodes drop out. We've got some great guests coming up. We've got some studio episodes. We've got some Zoom episodes with some fantastic rappers talking about the films they love and the films that influenced them. We got a lot going on there. Plus, you get some bonus content like film reviews, all that kind of thing. I don't need to explain this to you. You know what a Patreon is. But yeah, it's patreon.com/Kinell Sinister Cinema. So check that out. Peace. Yes, people. What's good? I'm Kinell, and this is Sinister Cinema, where we get deep into the guts of the stranger side of cinema. Kinell Sinister Cinema is brought to you by Forgotten Sons Apparel. Check them out at forgottensonsapparel.co.uk. Forgotten Sons Apparel is a York-based streetwear brand drawing inspiration from alternative culture, tattoos, film, classic TV and cartoons from our childhood. In our own words, if you like our stuff half as much as we do, then we like it twice as much as you. I'm a big fan of this brand and I love the guys who make it. They've supported me for years, way before I was podcasting. They supported me in my battle rap career. You might have seen me rocking some of their garms on Don't Flop and other leagues. I love Forgotten Sons Apparel and I'm urging you all to check them out at forgottensonsapparel.co.uk. Right, now on with the show. Hey, safe, what's good, people? Kinell himself here. Hope you are all good out there. I'm feeling a little under the weather, I'm not going to lie, lads. I'm recording this on the 21st of May, which means yesterday was Don't Flop's April Fools in Bristol. The excellent battle with Gas there. That should be up on the Don't Flop Patreon soon. That's where all the PPVs go, so you can cop that, check that out. Pretty rapid. Brilliant performance from Gast. I was really happy with it. That was the horrorcore battle. Loads of other sick battles there. As for other gigs, I should pull up what other gigs I've got coming up. I mean, in July the 15th, I am up in Glasgow battling Melody for Iron Bars. And obviously, you got to be a really a proper idiot to schedule like things. Like podcasting after you've come back from a big flipping mission to Bristol. Not a lot of sleep was had. It did get wavy. But the one thing that's even dumber than that is being in a freestyle tournament later today. If you're on the Patreon, it might still be going because Tin and T9 Games from Ireland, the Irish streamer lad who does a bit with battle rap, is doing a 24-hour live stream, which is currently running. I'll be popping on it in a few hours to do for a freestyle competition, and he's raising money for an Irish flipping cancer charity, the Irish Cancer Society. That's the one. But yes, anyway, if you don't care about any of that, I'm just going to get straight into it and bring on my fantastic guest, the amazing Ygraine. Is it Ygraine?
It is. You got it right. Completely right.
Yeah, suddenly started doubting myself there, like right at the last second. How are you? You feeling good?
I'm good. How are you? Apart from a little bit off, worse for wears today.
We've always got the energy. So I'm running. Some would say running on fumes. I would say running on vibes. But yes. I forgot to bring my microphone over. Safe. But yeah, so anyway, you've got your finger in all sorts of pies. Like, I was going to start introducing all your stuff, but do you want to sort of break down what you sort of get up to and where people can catch all the Ygraine content that's out there on the internet?
Yeah, sure. So I am the host of What a Scream podcast, which is podcast where myself and a guest chat about a certain topic in horror, and we choose two films that have to do with that topic, and then we kind of discuss them. I'm also the co-host on Movies, Murder and Mayhem, which is the true crime, true horror, and true stories behind those horror films. And I am a senior contributor at both Moving Pictures Film Club and Ghouls Magazine. And I'm also I've been a contributor to places like Fangoria, Dread Central, The Geek Show, Horrified Mag, and Film in Dublin.
Jeez, big list of very prestigious outlets there. Like, yeah, I'm a big fan of your podcast. What a Scream! Like, I like it, like, because it's on the same feed, isn't it? The sort of movies and mayhem, and
it is, yeah.
Yeah, and like some of those, you kind of go down a little bit of a. I've heard episodes of that where you go down a little bit of a folklore sort of route.
Yeah.
You know, Irish folklore is something I know nothing about, but I'm always really interested in hearing about. Like, is it like is that something that's like always sort of like been in the background for you?
Oh God, yeah. Like even when I was little, you know, I grew up knowing all the myths and legends in Ireland, and then in Ireland, folklore is still a massive part of our lives. I don't know if you've seen You Are Not My Mother, but that's a really good depiction of how folklore is still very intrinsic to Irish society. So we still have a strong belief in the fairies and the oshea, and we still have beliefs like don't eat blackberries after Halloween because you'll get poisoned by the witches. You know, there's lots of tales about the banshees and these kind of omens of death. So yeah, Irish mythology and Irish folklore is still very, very much part of our culture and society.
Yeah. Because I find it fascinating. Am I right in thinking there was like some plans for a road that had to be diverted?
Yeah, so there's been quite a few instances where obviously the big wigs in the government want to put a motorway or a road through. One of them was the Hill of Tara, which is a sacred site, and then they wanted to put another one through a fairy field, and there was massive like protests against it, and they eventually diverted their plans for this road so as not to destroy a cultural site, but also not to piss off the fairies.
Well, this is it. Like, you got to play it safe, isn't it? We don't know what fairies are capable of. We don't have that information.
Yeah, I mean, how many horror films have we seen where we've got, you know, people trying to build over something that is unseen, and it goes horribly wrong. So like let's not poke the shark. Let's not you know, mess with fate.
That makes sense. Like, you know, I like to ask people, like, sort of like, you know, like particularly like horror content producers like yourself, like sort of how they got into horror. Was like the sort of folklore thing. Like, do you think that was something that sort of ushered you in the direction of horror?
I guess, yeah, it would have been, as well as I got into horror by reading. So, you know, I was always fascinated with vampires. So I knew Dracula by the time I was 6, and, you know, reading Frankenstein and stuff like that, reading up on like you know, like non-fiction stuff as well about this kind of beliefs in these vampires and demons. And then I lived in England for a little bit, and where I was, there was a very strong history of witchcraft, and so I was very aware of that as well. And then by the time I was 11, I was reading books on like serial killers and true crime. So yeah, it would have been literature and folklore that would have been my first foray into the horror world.
Just found yourself drawn to all things unnatural and macabre.
Yeah, definitely. I was that weirdo kid in school that was like, I see ghosts, or I wanted to see ghosts. And like even when I was tiny, I would always have nightmares. And I remember being like 3 or 4, and my bed at the time was up against a wall. And I was like, I said to my mom one day, I can't look at that wall when I'm trying to get to sleep because the faces of dead people come up at night. So like I've always been this weird little morbid kid that, you know, said weird things. My parents were like, do we need to get an exorcist in? Or, you know, so yeah, I guess I've always been that little goth kid.
I respect it. Like I've been thinking about this recently. Like flipping, like at my nan's house, that they had this book on like that was like all like different myths and things like Spring Heel Jack and all that kind of thing. And I suppose that would have been like one of the first sort of things I read and all. Like,
Yeah, I guess
So,
like kids just pick up on little things, don't they? And then they just kind of run with it. They
yeah.
build this weird hyper focus on things, and then that's their personality now.
Yeah, you got to respect it. Flipping. Well, you don't get to pick whether you're the weirdo goth kid. It's something bestowed upon you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you mentioned like I am not your mother. She. What was it called again?
You are not my mother.
You are not my mother. That's the one.
I am not your mother, Kinell.
It's in the shed today. Like, are there any other like sort of like Irish films you could push me in the direction of that sort of have that kind of like folkloric take?
We've had stuff like The Hole in the Ground, directed by Lee Cronin, who has obviously gone on to do Evil Dead Rise, and that touches on the legend of the Changeling, which was a baby or a child that was swapped out by fairies. There's a short film called The Changeling, and it's actually in the Irish language, Oscailga, and that touches on the lore of the Changeling, but within the famine times on Gatamore. And yeah, I mean, we've had a few like The Hallows, Without Name is another one, but I feel like a lot of those films didn't really explore what Irish folklore is fully, apart from when we're getting to like You Are Not My Mother and The Changeling. And so I think there's a lot more to come now that we're having this Irish horror boom at the moment. But if you would like a really good Irish film as well that touches as well on Irish history, which is very, very dark, if you know anything about Irish history, The Devil's Doorway is another really good Irish film.
Oh, yes, I have heard this one mentioned. I'm gonna have to go have a look into that, isn't it? Like,
do
yeah, yeah, like I suppose, like flipping. It seems to be like quite an easy setup, like like because for what should we call it, horror film, because you could just go, what if they did build the road through the fairies gaff, like.
Yeah. Although I'm sure that isn't that like oh god, there was a really bad Disney film and it's literally about leprechauns, and someone like an American comes to Ireland and wants to build a theme park on the site of like a leprechaun like history kind of field, and they get, I don't know, tricked by the leprechauns. I feel like that's already a film. But yes, there definitely could be a horror film that could touch on that.
Yeah, it's kind of fascinating, like, but like you say, like it's like, whilst it's an easy setup, like, okay, here's this creature from folklore, we'll introduce it. I think it's like, it would be more interesting to sort of see something that really dives into like where the folklore comes from, like these tales passed down from generations, where some of them like might have been like tales of warning or whatever.
Yeah, I definitely think there's obviously the legend of the Banshee, which was a wailing spirit, a wailing female spirit that would come along and warn of impending death. So that is something that funnily enough, hasn't really been explored in Irish horror. Well, Irish horror is so new. One of the first indigenously produced Irish horrors was 2004 by Conor McMahon. Yeah, so it's a very, I mean, Irish film industry in general is very, 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 very new because we didn't have the money. We were colonized by Britain. So it's a very new thing. So Irish horror hasn't really started since 2004. So I feel like, as I said before, there's so much to explore now that we are getting international recognition as well as a bit more funding. And I definitely want to see something like the Banshee explored, because it is like that's still a thing that people are scared of. They still talk about how scary like the Banshee, or what's that wailing outside, when really it's probably just foxes fucking. But
yeah. Foxes do be making the crazy sex noises.
They do.
Yeah. So Flippin', how's your year in horror been shaping out so far? Like, what's been tickling your fancy in the first half of the year of 2023?
I gotta say, it's Evil Dead Rise. Like, I know I'm pushing the Irish directors here, but my God, like I've seen it twice, since it came out. I went to see it twice. I saw it once in a press screening, and it was really annoying because I saw it before anyone else saw it, apart from those who were at South by Southwest. And I saw it before anybody else. It was so annoying because I couldn't talk about it. But then I went to see it again on opening night, and I'm actually probably going to rent it pretty soon now that it's come on video on demand. Yeah, I absolutely loved it. I thought it was fantastic. I'm a massive fan of the original franchise, so yeah, I think that's been my highlight, and I'm pretty sure it's probably gonna, unless something really like comes out and blows me away, I'm pretty sure that's gonna be my film of the year.
Yeah, flipping it's got to be up there for me, like, you know. But I'm excited to see, like, because I mean, like, we was both at Fright Fest last year, and that was a crazy year for like Fright Fest, like flipping, like everyone's end of year list had like a few things that debuted at Fright Fest again. Like, so.
I'm very excited this year.
Yeah, like flipping, like, you know, like this time last year we hadn't have heard of things like Barbarian and
Hypochondriac and
all these incredible things, like flipping what you call it. I've got accommodation books already. I am right. Flipping like flipping all over it. What should we call it? I'm definitely there next year. Like, so I am quite excited to see, like, but I don't think anything's gonna be like knocking it all the way out the top 5. Evil Dead Rise. It is such a banging film.
It is. You know what? Like, because obviously horror is quite subtextual, and we've had a lot of like subtext heavy films and very, you know, what's the message behind this? And even though in Evil Dead Rise there is a message, but it is quite emotional at times, but it's just a good old fashioned horror film where there's like blood, gore, scares, and it just feels like such a hark back to like the original Evil Dead. And I think that's why it was just something that I needed. Like, I needed that horror where I had the adrenaline rush coming, and like, even I left the screening and I was shaking from the adrenaline. Like, that's what I needed.
Yeah, flipping it. Yeah, like we've had a lot of elevated things, like, and flipping meditations on grief and trauma. I'm ready to see some crazy shit.
Yeah. Definitely.
Ready to see some crazy shit, and fucking like Evil Dead. Like, it's got to be said, like, flipping strong argument for most solid franchise of all time.
Yeah,
like, it's between Evil Dead and Scream, like, but flipping Evil Dead's like covers like a much wider ground, like.
Yeah, I know Scream has obviously the numbers on it, but I just feel like I don't know, like, even like, I'm not a massive fan of Army of Darkness, like, within the franchise. It would probably be my least favorite, but it's still a cracker, and it's still something that can be rewatched. And yeah, even, you know, with Fede Alvarez's and Lee Cronin's, it's just so good, and it creates this universe, this like Deadite verse. And I'm just really, because, you know, they have alluded to the fact they're going to bring everything together and they're going to create a universe, and I'm just so excited to see what they do with it.
Yeah, that because like now they've had it, like, you know, there's more than one Necronomicon, and like, you know, it can happen. It can turn up anywhere. It can happen there, like, and like I was talking to Connor from Unleash the Ghouls. He was on here for our little Evil Dead Rise review. I was saying, like, the thing that I most want to see, like, because they've got these infinite possibilities, I want, like, the record with the seance and the people, like, trying to stop it and that. Like, I want to know about the recording of that. I want because like it sounded like there was a lot of people in that room. It was like some kind of like secret society thing.
Yeah, well, that's Lee Cronin has said that that's the next film he wants to do. Now, I've previously said that I liked the Evil Dead franchise because it kept religion out of it. You know, possession horror is my favorite subgenre, and I really enjoy it when it's possession, but not necessarily always Christian. And so, the reason I really enjoy the Evil Dead is because it's up until kind of now, it's been atheistic. So I'm kind of on two ways. I'm like, oh, you know, of course the Irish fella brings in Catholicism into this. Of course he does. Way to be a stereotype there. So on one hand, I'm like, oh, do I really want to see this? On the other hand, I'm like, please don't be a stereotypical Catholic possession film. Like I want it to keep its Evil Dead sentimentalities, which I'd hope that Lee Cronin would, being a fan of the genre of the franchise.
Yeah, I think, like, you know, like, rather than it being like, you know, sort of a religious sort of summoning thing, because I was, you know, there's like a long history in like LA of like the Church of Satan, like Anton LaVey was doing lots of bits around Hollywood. He was in The Devil's Reign and flipping knocking about with Jane Mansfield and flipping Sammy Davis Jr. and all this, and there was a lot, and like sort of around the turn of century, I had all the sort of spiritism and seances, and all that kind of thing going on. And like there were these things that would turn out to be secret societies, like Bohemian Grove and so forth, and these kind of things. You know, there's a history of these things running through to this day. So I like the idea of, like, you know, like, not, you know, some kind of like secret organization. It's like, you know, and maybe, you know,
that would be interesting. Yeah,
some kind of like secret society thing, and because such things did exist, and, like, you know, had their connections with like spiritism and spiritualism and all that kind of thing. And like, you know, you hear all about these things like that, like the flipping, like the Nazis were buggering about with the occult, like, and so like there's like a lot of places where like it would make sense for a Necronomicon to turn up, like, throughout history.
Yeah, that would be an interesting inclusion. Yeah, that you should pitch that, Kinell.
Nick, my ideas, I'm too thick to write them down.
You're like, whatever.
Yeah, Lee Cronin, no doubt you're watching. 3 ideas there for you. Enjoy. But yeah, like flipping. Do you reckon it's like flipping, because things have been elevated for so long, and like I think during COVID, like even the movies that weren't like particularly like COVID movies, like movies about COVID, there was that sense of like a lot of people were writing their really introspective script from the like from like, you know, the sense of isolation. There was a lot of that, and like flipping, like, obviously, like one of those was Evil Dead Rise, but that was a bit of a gnarly one. Like, do you think it is time for a bit of a kickback against all this sort of introspection and just have some like gnarly shit again?
Yeah, I mean, there's always been gnarly shit, obviously, if you're into stuff that's a bit more extreme or underground. But yeah, I think, like, I like that interest. I do like the introspective horror.
Yeah.
And, you know, I hate the term, but elevated horror. And this kind of almost let's look at ourselves psychologically and examine that. Like, I do like that horror.
Yeah.
But when it comes to stuff that you want to go to the cinema with, or stuff that you want to watch with your mates that generally would do well in the cinema, I am looking for that nasty kickback again. Like, I just love those films that are like real theatrical, that take it back to like William Castle and all the theatrics in the cinema. And I love hearing people's reactions. Like when I went to see Evil Dead Rise for the second time, I was listening and looking for people's reactions, because I love that in cinema, you know, as long as it's not disruptive. I love that in cinema. So yeah, like I think the last time we had that kind of like nasty cinema was kind of like in the early 2000s, when all like the, in quotation marks, torture porn came out. And I just think I'm really excited to see this revival of the nastiness in cinema. I want to see that. I do want to see that.
Because they are the Friday night movies, the Saturday night movies, the ones where you do go and watch them on opening night because you want to see it popping, like, and
exactly, yeah. I want to. Sorry, go on.
Like Evil Dead Rise is just such a fantastic example of that. It was just excellent vibes, and the new Scream as well. Like flipping.
I mean, I want to go to a film on a Friday and Saturday night. Not that I ever go out all that often, but I wanna come out of the cinema like punch in the air and be like, yeah. I don't want to like, most of the time I don't want to come out and be like, I've got to go home now because I'm questioning my every existence. Like, that's fine, but I think I just want those Friday and Saturday nights back, where I'm like, yeah, something about that kind of theatrical horror that you just need that little adrenaline kick from.
Yeah, and I definitely feel like the appetite's there for it. Like it's you know, it's like flipping. There's been phases when like horror movies come out. It's just like you see the people you know from that cinema every time you go. But now we're getting back to the point where like, you know, a lot of people are just like in the mood for something gnarly of a Friday.
Yeah, definitely.
Like that used to be my thing. Like when I was a teenager and like, you know, first started having like mates had cars and that, like we just go and see whatever the new film was, and it didn't matter if it was flipping 10 Things I Hate About You or flipping American Pie, or it'd be The Craft or Scream and all these kind of things. And I feel that kind of like weekend movie culture is like it feels like there's a bit of an appetite for it more than after COVID, like.
Definitely. Or like, you know, like sleepover movies. Like I was thinking about this during the week, like those movies that you'd go to a sleepover and watch. Like you couldn't really imagine going to a sleepover and being like, hey, let's watch Midsommar or Hereditary. Like, you know, those are films for your alone time, when you can cry into a pillow. But like just this hark back to films like The Craft, like Scream, that, you know, you'd, as a teenager, you'd go to a sleepover and you'd put on and watch it and scare yourself silly. Like I love those kind of films, and yeah, I'd love to see them have a bit of a resurgence.
Yeah, flipping. What is it? So, is there any others that have any other like really good cinema experiences with horror this year?
Apart from Scream, I haven't really gotten to go to the cinema because I get a lot of like screeners online, so I'm at home, and plus my mom, so I don't really get to go out to the cinema all that much. I am planning on definitely going to see the new Exorcist when it comes out, as kind of nervous about it as I am.
The test screenings have apparently been shocking. Like,
I know, I've seen such bad things, and I'm kind of like, on the one hand, I'm sad about it because I don't want The Exorcist to be tarred, but on the other hand, I'm just like,
that said, The Exorcist, not a consistent franchise in general.
Oh God, no, like just watch the first and third, and you'll be fine.
I mean, it's funny because like the Exorcist prequel, like we could be seeing a repeat here because the Exorcist prequel, like that had like really shocking test screenings, so they did loads of reshoots and recuts and re-edits. So it was a completely different film, and then that film ended up bombing, so they put out the original after it. And that's why.
Yeah. It was like done by two different directors. Like the two different versions were done by two different directors, and I mean they're both as bad as each other. There was really no need for them.
Yeah, like I was on board with David Gordon Green. Doing Halloween, like, you know, it's a slasher franchise. It's, you know, I'm down with that. I did enjoy them, even ends and kills. I enjoyed them for what they were. But like, I think it's kind of, you're in very different territory with The Exorcist. Like,
yeah, I didn't enjoy the new Halloween franchise at all. And so when I heard that he was directing the new Exorcist film, I was kind of like, oh, I'm very scared. Like, this makes me very nervous. And I just, I don't know. I don't want to give an opinion before the film's even out. But yeah, I'm very worried about it.
Yeah, flipping. I've definitely got a bit of trepidation, like, because, like, fucking, I think he's good at what he does, but I don't think what he does is the Exorcist movies.
Yeah, I think it's just one of those films that should never have had a prequel or should never have a remake. Like, it's just, I just don't think. I mean, it is going to have all of that because what film doesn't nowadays?
Yeah.
But it's definitely one of those that they just shouldn't have touched.
Yeah, flipping Blumhouse, what you call it? Like you should leave something alone, like.
Yeah.
I mean, flipping like the pound, flipping like it was obviously like the dollar signs in his eyes, like, okay, we'll get this, and then right, flipping, this guy's making money, and like, I'm not sure, like your film's making a load of money with the existing IP is like the flipping, the sign of quality, like, so is the original Exorcist like one of your was that like quite an influential film for you?
Yeah, it's my favorite film ever. Like, not just my favorite horror, it's my favorite film ever. Like, I have Exorcist tattoos and everything. And yeah, it was one of those films that when I first saw it, it was just like, that was it. I knew my life had changed. So yeah, I'm absolutely obsessed by The Exorcist. Like, I watch it at least once a year, if not twice. I've, read the books. I read all the other books that kind of talk about it, and I've seen the stage show. Like,
The
yeah, I'm
stage
just
show. Oh, that was a
yes.
thing. Like, where
Yeah,
did you
it's
watch
really weird
that?
because it was the Halloween 2019 because it was just before COVID. And it's really funny because Ian McKellen does the voice of the demon of Pazuzu. So yeah,
No
it's
way.
really it's really weird when you think about it, because you're like, what's Gandalf doing to that little girl? But you know what? I thought it was quite good for what it is. Like, it's a good night out.
Yeah. Like when it is a stage show, you're not expecting the same experience, are you? Like,
Yeah, no. But
you
you know what? It
can't.
was really impressed. They did like the levitation scene, they did the head turning scene. So like it was quite impressive for like a theater production that they still held on to those bits in the film that make it, that are quite memorable and famous.
Yeah. I presume you've seen like the documentary, like with I can't remember if it was Friedkin or Blatty, like where he knocks around with the guy they based the Pope's Exorcist on.
Yeah, yes, I have seen it. Yeah, it's a little bit cringe. It's kind of like, oh, it did make me cringe a little bit.
Yeah,
But
I
yeah,
have
it's
seen the
kind of
Pope's Exorcist.
no, I haven't seen it yet. I
That,
meant to go see it, but I just haven't gotten around to it yet.
yeah, I've not heard great things, to be honest. Like, but like it is based off a weird dude, and apparently like he was just going, oh yeah, flipping, we don't think this is there's no levitation and flipping head turning,
Yeah.
and your man's like, I made that up, right? I made that up for a film in the 70s.
Yeah, I just think that whole thing is hilarious. Like, I mean, The Exorcist is like my favorite thing, but I just think the Catholic Church are hilarious. I think that's just like being brought up in Irish culture. I just think the Catholic Church are hilarious, and yeah, them being like, we need exorcists, and you're just like, yeah, okay, sure thing.
Yeah, flipping absolutely wild. Like flipping like you said you like possession horror, but what are some like outside the Evil Dead? Would you consider some possession horrors that aren't particularly of a religious bent?
There's not many.
Yeah.
It's not. I mean, obviously, you can argue whether it's a possession film or not, but there's Possession, which is loosely possession horror, I guess. But yeah, I mean, I'm more interested in possession from other cultures. So there is The Possession, which has Jeffrey Dean Morgan in it, and that comes at it from a Jewish perspective, which is really, really interesting. And then we've got stuff like The Wailing, which is like South Korean, and what was the one I watched? The Medium, which is Thai and South Korean. So I'm really interested in these kind of possession films, but from a non-Christian perspective, because obviously it's something that is found all the world over, not just from the Bible. So yeah, that would be one of my greatest interests. But yeah, I do think the non-theistic possession isn't explored all that much, which is a shame, because like I once had a dream, right? This is going off kilter, but I once had a dream
we love off kilter around these parts.
I once had a dream where my little nephew, when he was little, sorry, he's like 16 now, he's not little anymore. When he was a baby, I dreamt that he got possessed, and me and my brother-in-law were freaking out because we were like, shit, my sister's coming home in a bit, how do we get this baby unpossessed? And we couldn't figure out how to like exorcise him of the demons, because we weren't Christian, we weren't Jewish, we weren't Muslims. We were just like, what do we do as atheists? What do we do? So yeah, that that dream was played on my mind for what, like 16 years now. So
Jeez. There's something in that. There's something in that there. Like, it's something you need to flip and explore as a story. Like, I reckon, like, if it stayed with you that long.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. It is interesting. Like, I am interested in, like, you mentioned the Wailing, which is a particularly good film. Things like incantation, or like a lot of like Asian like folklore based stuff is like quite interesting to me. And like one thing I find interesting is how like a bunch of different cultures will like separately come up with the same kind of like a thing. Like I was just listening to a podcast on Diarona, the sort of Wailing Sea Woman, and it's like flipping. It's basically the same setup as like I know it's Scottish. I don't know if it's Irish as well. The Kelpie.
Yeah.
So it's fascinating how these like separate cultures will evolve things like that, like wolfman creatures, shapeshifters, and like that. Like every culture that it seems to have some form of legend like that. Like
like even vampires. If you think like there's Chinese vampires, there's Japanese vampires, there's Irish vampires. Obviously Eastern European vampires is massive, like folklore when it comes to vampires in Eastern Europe that predates the whole Vlad the Impaler thing. But yeah, like that, vampires across the world has always fascinated me, because that was my first horror obsession, was vampires. So that is always like, I've always found that so fascinating, how every culture has its different vampire. And like what's in it? Where does it come from? Were there actual vampires that traveled across the world? And it's absolutely fascinating.
Yeah, flipping what should we call it? I like the Chinese ones that hop, because they're quite amusing. Like flipping, like they did the Mr. Vampire films about them, which is with Sammo Hung. I think like Eureka are putting out like a box set of like flipping like all the sequels, and there's a lot of them. So I think I've got that on pre-order. It's one of those things that I pre-order ages ago, and like, do I really need it? Probably don't, but I'll forget that I pre-ordered it, and I can't be arsed sending it back now.
You're like, it's here now.
Yeah, it's a big origin of a lot of my collection. Like, you say you watch a lot of screeners. Do you do collect much with like physical media?
Not really. I've been between a lot of houses over my lifetime, so I can't have you kind of learn to live minimally. Which I used to have a massive physical media collection, massive. And then because I was, we've got a housing crisis here in Ireland, so I was constantly moving house. And I just had to get rid of it. Unfortunately, I regret it now. I wish I'd kept it, but no, I'm more of a digital person. Perhaps one day when I get when hopefully we get our own permanent house, I will. I've started my Blu-ray collection, but that's mainly from like people sending me Blu-rays. But yeah, once I get that fixed abode, hopefully I can restart my physical collection. But yeah, I was very tempted to get the recent release of Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I think I still might get it. Yeah, I think I still might get it. But yeah, there's a lot of things that I've kind of had my eye on. But then again, unfortunately, when you do have a child, you're kind of like, do I have to feed them this week, or can I get this Blu-ray?
This is it. Like, the cats are flipping bad enough. Like, and my cats are probably a lot cheaper.
Well, I have cats and a rabbit as well. So
yeah. I like, this is it. Like, there is a lot of these like good like flipping like the Texas Chainsaw one. I got like just the disc of it, but it's like they put out these things that are just like a really good collector's item of as well as like the disc, and it's like a really good version of a film that you're always going to want to rewatch. Like,
Yeah, exactly. The text has changed because it's got an essay by Tim Coleman, the editor of Moving Pictures Film Club, in it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, if anyone wants to gift it to me, I'll take it with open arms. But yeah, I think that's gonna be a purchase in the future.
Here's a mad one for you. Like you mentioned Tim Coleman. Found out the most bizarre thing, like flipping, like where I grew up, like little North Wales, what should we call it, outside Wrexham. We had like the kind of like the scumbag villages and like the slightly nicer villages that were like kind of nearby, like, and we didn't really have any kind of like private schools, right? Or like so you would get like the kids from like slightly better off backgrounds mixing in with the scumbags like me. And like flipping like this blew my mind, right? Really, flipping me and Tim were in the same school at the same time.
No way. That's so random.
Yeah, and he's like this like flipping such eloquently spoken professor. And I'm like flipping like a battle rapper with a drink problem. Well, like no one would have guessed that we came from the same school. I wouldn't have guessed, and I was there. Like it was like the year below me. Absolute mad thing. Yeah.
There you go. I was going to say that school producing a horror minds.
Aye, significant alumni. Like, there's a lot to be scared of in North Wales. It's not folklore. It's just the locals. We'll get the first half of kill list to the back half. Yeah. This is like going to be like quite a short little episode because I didn't have everything prepped, and also I am dying. So I think we'll wrap it up there. This has been an ace chat though. This has been fantastic. Do you want to let people know the socials and what you want people to get eyes on?
Yeah, sure. So you can find the podcast, both my podcasts, on Spotify, Google Podcast, Apple, wherever you listen to podcasts, basically. I'm on Twitter at @what_scream, and also on Instagram at @whatascream. I am currently doing a video series with Moving Pictures called Around the World in 80 Horror Films, so you can check that out on the Moving Pictures social media as well.
Yeah, I've been following that. It's been really good. Like some really good little short form video insight into like a lot of like interesting films. Like a lot of my favorites have been crossfade up in there. It's a really good series, so definitely follow that. Well, that's been fantastic. Thank you so much, Ygraine. I'll hopefully get you back on at some point, and maybe if you're like over here, we could do a studio episode or get the old Suspiria light in it. On the go.
That would be great.
I've seriously got to get back into the studio. Like I've got to redo my ads at the start, and I can't be bothered doing it.
It's such a hassle.
Yeah, I can never be bothered doing it. Like when I've got someone in because I've got something to do, and like just read it on your own to a camera sucks. When it's a whole studio that you got to set up and everything. I'm just whinging about these stupid little problems here. Yeah, it doesn't matter, but nonetheless, okay. Thank you so much. And this has been the KSC. Follow man on Twitch, by the way. About soon, you know what it is. Peace.